like, how do you, I mean, do you still date? Do you date guys? How does that all work for you?
Wow. So
Okay, we are on. Welcome back. Today with my guest, Safiya Robinson on I'm Too Old for This Shit podcast. I'm Angie, and I guess I'm too old to take any kind of shit now, and so are my guests. If you don't know me, I'm Angie and the founder of angies.com. That's angie-s.com, link in the show notes, where I'm a health and skincare consultant. I help women who don't fit into the extremes implement healthier habits that don't manage them. I'm about tips and tricks that work, make sense, and just help you stay on top of it without making you bored to tears. We're talking what you eat, put on your skin, and do to feel your best. And because we are all so freaking busy, we're keeping it fun and irreverent, okay? So I created this podcast because I wanted to talk about well-being beyond food, skincare, and meditation. I wanted to have guests on who can share their wisdom on relationships, sex, dating, owning a business, mental health, and basically all of these things that I am also excited and curious about, but I have also experienced the ups and downs of, which most of us have. So I truly hope that you find this useful and helpful. Today we have Safiya on to talk about celibacy. Now what's interesting is that both Safiya and I have similar looking sexual history, like with the gaps, the timelines. Yes, I used to be a bit of a nun at times, but for very different reasons to Safiya. Now, interestingly enough, the conversation morphed in a way I didn't anticipate, and well, I enjoyed it very much. Safiya has a deep soul with the most sweet-sounding, delicious voice that I fell in love with, and also fell in love with her personality. Safiya is a brilliant woman and just soothing to the soul to hang out with. I hope you enjoy listening to her as much as I did. So, without further ado,
Welcome, Safiya.
hi, thanks. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to be doing this interview with you today. So before we dive in, would you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about yourself? Like give us an introduction about who's Safiya.
Sure, no problem. So I'm Safiya, and I live in Barbados at the moment. So have done I grew up here, and I've been living here again for the last almost 10 years now. So that's where I am now. But I've lived in the UK. I've spent a bit of time in Tanzania, various places. So right now I'm in Barbados. Who knows where I'll end up next? But that's where I am.
I mean, that just sounds amazing. I do definitely want to go visit Barbados at some point.
Yeah, you should. Everybody should. I'm just plugging it right now. Everybody should come and visit Barbados. It's a nice place.
Yeah, no, that's what I hear. That's definitely what I hear. So did you move around for work? Because like, what do you do for a trade? And
okay, well, I am a dentist. When I first moved to the UK, I was studying dentistry, so I was living in Bristol, but then I was there for work as well. I came back to Barbados for a bit, and then I moved back there for work, and I came back here again for work. So that was mostly it. When I was in Tanzania, I was volunteering with a charity, but it was dentistry, but it was a charity that does training for their doctors and nurses over there, dental training. So that was interesting. A few months over there.
Okay, and this is the thing about you, Safiya, that like even on the surface, like because obviously like you were dentist by trade, and so that's it's very conventional, like like everything that parents would like.
Yes.
Obviously love that. They go, great choice.
Yeah, they do.
They do, exactly. And at the same time, you're out there, you living in different places, you don't really go by convention, and now you're in Barbados, and I just
yeah. The other thing about me that I think is interesting is that I'm a writer. So I have a blog. I finished a book that is finally going into the self-publishing phase. Should be available in May. Yeah, so that's the other side of me, like the nighttime Kate wearing side of me.
And because I know you've published different types of books, right? Was it both a mixture of fictional and non-fictional?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I loved to read fiction and I loved to write fiction. I always thought I'm going to be a fiction writer. That's going to be it. And then when I started traveling, because I love traveling, I got into this habit of sending long emails to my friends and family about the trip and just about the country that I was visiting, whatever. And that kind of got me really into writing nonfiction. I was like, I kind of like this style. So that's when I started my blog, it was actually nonfiction. It was actually about the lessons I learned before I turned 40. And started writing about that. And then I started writing about other nonfiction stuff. And that's what the first book was about. But later on in the year, I was like, I don't really want to write fiction. So I actually wrote a novel, which is just a love story, totally unrelated to the blog, unrelated to everything. Super fun, really enjoyed it. I'm not publishing that one, but I'm going to make it available to anybody who wants to read it at some point when I get my head around having it tidied up and edited and stuff like that. But it was just fun. It was super fun.
Is that the love story that you want everyone to be able to read?
Yeah, it's called Lessons in Love. I was about 3/4 of the way through it before I realized that it was because my blog was about life lessons. And this one is about lessons in love. But I was literally about 3/4 of the way through writing it before I realized that that was the common theme. Like I hadn't even thought about it when I started, but I just really enjoyed it. And the thing, like I always used to think of nonfiction and fiction as being so different. But when I was writing this fiction, I realized how much writing fiction can be exploring like real life topics, but in a fictional setting. So I now don't actually think they're that different because, at the end of the day, I think you can learn just as much from a fiction as you can from a nonfiction, but sometimes having it in a fictional setting actually kind of removes you a bit from the lessons or from the themes or whatever, and you can actually see them a bit clearer because you're standing a little bit further away. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, that really makes sense. It's a little bit like analogies, like an analogy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's easier to understand because you have that degree of separation from it.
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And most fictions, all of the big literature, and whether it's for children or adults, all of them actually do have like real life themes, and
they do. Yeah,
people make all kinds of comparisons. So
they do. Yeah.
You mentioned about a common theme between the fiction and the nonfiction, like a theme that you keep writing about. What was that?
It's about life lessons. It's a bit funny. I would say I came up with this idea probably maybe 6 months before my 40th birthday. And I was like, I just wanted to write about the lessons I've learned in life because I feel like at the time that something is happening, sometimes it can feel quite traumatic or can feel quite painful at the time it's happening. But when you move away from it, sometimes you can look back on it and reflect and see it was valuable or you learned a lesson from it. And that was what I wanted to write about. So that's how I started that process of doing my life lessons. And I really enjoyed it. And it almost kind of changed how I viewed life, because then even it kind of made me appreciate how even the negative things that seem negative at the time can have a positive impact later on if you allow it to, just kind of stay there and rest and then look back on it, and you're able to see, oh, well, if I hadn't gone through that experience, I wouldn't be this person now, or I wouldn't have this ability now. Those unexpected things that happen is where you develop skills that you never thought you'd need to have, or, you kind of gain more pieces to yourself that you didn't have before. I really enjoyed the process.
No, it makes sense. And yeah, it's just at the time you never sort of feel like it's a good thing happening, but obviously in hindsight, it's just that growth in way it's led you to the reason why one of the reasons why I got you on today is because I want to talk about the celibacy.
Yes.
Celibacy about it. But there's also a big part of me now that I'm hearing you talk that I sort of almost want to go in and ask, like, because I don't know if maybe part of the celibacy is part of what maybe you write in your life lessons. Because you do the love letters and you do the love stories, and you do the life lessons blog. And I wonder if any of that sort of is tied up to it, or if it's completely separate.
It is completely separate. But the funny thing about the celibacy, and I think we discussed this in our initial conversation, but the funny thing about the celibacy is that it's not even something that I really gave a lot of thought to. Like, it wasn't this big decision that I made or anything. So it wasn't really something that I gave a lot of thought to. So no, I didn't mention it. And also, sometimes I think people might think it's a bit weird. And it doesn't bother me so much, but I'm not sure I'd write about it in my blog.
Yeah, no, and that's fair enough, because it's interesting, because especially like in this day and age, everyone's being very, everyone always tries to make a point of saying, oh, we're very sex positive, and you can't shave. It's like it's like the two extremes. It's like almost you can't, you have to bask in it and be like taking like sex baths every day, or you like shaming it. It's like there's like no in between.
There isn't.
It's gone a little bit, it's very polarized, and it's a weird transition like society is going through. I find like I sort of keep a distance from it. So I just know how I feel, and then that's it. Yeah.
One thing I will say about that, though, I think that I honestly think that it's part of a spectrum. Like, I feel like if somebody should be allowed to be free to be open about their sexuality, somebody should also equally be allowed to be free to be open about being celibate. But the funny thing is that I think people who, like, I know people who are like this, who want to be comfortable to be open discussing things relating to sexuality, and they don't think that I want to discuss it, or that they can say it around me because they're like, oh, she's celibate, she wouldn't want to discuss it. And I'm just like, the same way I want to be free to be myself, I want other people to be free to be themselves. I feel like it's part of the same spectrum, but it's funny how people view it as like the polar opposites.
Yeah, because it's all about free choice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is about choice, and it's about feeling not being made to feel ashamed for the choices that you've made, whatever that choice is.
Yeah, and also people's opinion are exactly just that.
Exactly
in life, is you can live based on people's opinion, because that, and then this is not to sound like, I don't know, like really negative and dark, but it's just like that person's opinion, that person's not going to be there one day, just like we are not going to be here one day. So are we just going to live our life based on someone's opinion, which is going to be fleeting and is not going to be a constant forever? So right, it's just so I like to actually for you to share your thoughts with me, like on celibacy as a personal choice versus like, because yours was very much like a free will personal choice versus something that's an imposed choice by culture or by religion, right?
Yes, definitely.
So can you sort of like, how would you describe, I guess, like your position on that, like celibacy as a personal choice, and sort of how you came to realize?
Sure.
When not interested in sex.
Yeah, it's a bit roundabout, but I guess I've had various experiences throughout my life, and when I started, I guess it was probably within the last few years, I started to be more. I guess I started to feel more free about making those personal choices. That was where it started, because I felt like for a long time I was more prone to go away the status quo. But when I got to a slightly older age, then I felt like, what, I should be able to make choices based on what I'm comfortable with, what I'm enjoying, how I'm feeling, not to the detriment of other people, but as you say, not to spend my life living up to other people's expectations. And, so when I started to look around at some of the things that I was doing or saying or even wearing, like whatever, all the things in life that you do, that are just a part of the common expectation, and being okay with, yeah, that's just something I'm not interested in doing. I'm not going to do it. And not feeling ashamed about that for myself personally. So, not going to a party just because everybody says, oh, let's go to this party or whatever. And this was just a part of that process. I think I just eventually realized, I was like, you know what? It wasn't something that I found totally enjoyable. I like physical contact, but I was just like, it didn't mean enough to me to seek it out and to make that a big part of my life. But also because I felt like I started thinking about the other things that filled me up, like my relationships, my friendships, things that were important to me. And I felt like I was just as fulfilled having those things in my life without necessarily having to be seeking a partner or a sexual partner, that kind of thing. And so it just kind of happened almost organically as a part of the process of kind of removing those things that I felt like I was doing because I should be doing it, as opposed to what I really wanted to spend my time doing.
So, because I have a question for you, because this is like, so how did you know the difference between that you weren't really interested in, that you weren't interested in sex in that way, versus that maybe you just weren't attracted to someone, or maybe you didn't really have a very good lover? Like, how did you make that difference, right? How did you know?
Well, that's difficult. I am perfectly open to the possibility that I just didn't have the right person. Like I have a couple of friends who are like, I'm sure she found the right person, whatever. And I'm still open to the possibility that if I find the right person, it will happen. I'm not anti, like, I'm not anti-sex, or I'm not like, one of these people who thinks it's awful or horrible. I just felt like I could take it or leave it. And even though I was attracted to a person, like there are people that I've been very attracted to, but equally, I didn't find that aspect of it added to our relationship. So it was like, maybe that's just not for me, but also the fact that I don't feel like I miss it that much.
Yeah.
Like I don't sit around thinking about it. I don't seek it out. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything from that perspective.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here,
Sure.
just so that to help, I guess, because I know when we spoke, like it was very clear to me that it is, I understood the difference between, like,
having a bad experience versus just not being interested. Yeah.
But yeah, because when we spoke last time, what I call like a sexual history CV, if you were to look at a CV of a sexual partner, it looked very similar in the sense that the gaps, because I've also gone through like long periods without it. All these things. So if we were to look on the surface, we all like it looked very similar, but the reason behind was very different. So and I think, I guess what I want to say is that because obviously the longer you go without, you kind of like, even for someone like me who is a sexual being, I like if long time goes by, I can kind of almost go, yeah, I don't remember what the first was about. But then the more you do, right? But then but let's say if I'm with someone and I'm really attracted and the sex is good and he's like a decent lover,
you kind of were like, oh yeah, I remember what this was about.
What it's about, yeah. Right, and then you want more, but or I want more, but it's but I think that there's a difference between because a lot of us go through phases where the sex that we have is not great, and it's but there's a difference between like I'll be curious to having it better, like to improving it. I'll actually research and I'll try stuff out. Versus actually realizing, right, exactly. And this is why
I am not that interested.
There you go. Yeah.
I think that's it. I'm just genuinely not. Like I know people like that who think about, how can it be better or whatever, but I'm genuinely not that interested. I guess the other thing too is like, I've had really good relationships with guys, in terms of there's so many other things about the relationship that I really enjoy. I guess I just wasn't interested enough to pursue the ways in which it could be better.
Yes.
I was just like, I'm not. I was not fussed about it. And also I think like I have this theory that there's, as I said, when I talk about there being a spectrum, I have this theory that if I feel that way, there must be other people that feel that way about it.
There are.
You know?
Yes. No, 100%.
So,
yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like, it may not be something that's a very common thing to say. I definitely can see the benefits of it. I think, there are people who really enjoy it. And like you say, you want to research, you want to see how it could be better and whatever, but I'm not that interested.
Yeah. And I think that's important to drive home, right? Because that's when, that's an important distinction.
It is. I think it is. But also I think that makes it easier because, you mentioned earlier about it being a personal choice versus something that's imposed on you through either society, culture, religion, that type of thing. I know people who have felt like they've chosen it for those reasons. They've chosen it because of their spiritual background, or they've chosen it because of their cultural background, or whatever the case is. And for them, it's this big deal. Like it's this big deal. It's a hard choice, or it's something that they're very aware of the abstaining part of it. It almost feels like when you give up chocolate and you really like chocolate, you're like, this feeling of being virtuous because I said I was going to give up chocolate and I gave up chocolate, and now look, somebody passed me with some chocolate and I have to restrain myself.
Yes.
But I felt like it was so funny because I guess I'm just not that interested in it. It doesn't even feel like some critical part of it being a really hard choice or anything. It was for me, I found it was quite easy simply because I just wasn't that bothered about it.
Was it almost like a relief that you've understood yourself in that way? You came to that decision?
It was a bit of a relief to feel like I could express the person that I was, if that made sense. So it was a bit of a relief to feel like I don't have to pretend, or I don't have to, like if people are having conversations about, their relationships or their sexual experience or whatever, I don't have to sit there and pretend that I have one to talk about, or, like I can just be myself. The same way somebody's sitting there talking about playing basketball and you don't play basketball, you can be like, oh, that sounds interesting, but not feel like jealous or any of those things. So for me, it was a relief to feel like I don't have to live up to other people's expectations.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, because it wasn't a cultural or religious choice, if I meet somebody, in a few weeks or a few months or whatever, and I feel that connection and I want to, I feel like it's going to get to that stage or it progresses to that stage, then, we'll see what happens. But it's not, I don't feel the need to seek it out. I don't feel the need to, I don't think I need this thing. It's not that important to me.
Yeah. And it is like you said, that you don't feel like you have to prove yourself. You don't feel like it's anything that's lacking. You don't feel that you feel that you can be part of the conversation with someone. It has sex or they don't have sex. All of those things to me definitely, those speak really loudly to the fact that that it's definitely a choice that you're comfortable with and it's authentic to you. And like for you, being authentic is really important. It's something that, with time you've come to understand that it's important to just be that way in your life for everything. And, it's like when we're in our 20s, when we're teenagers, like we want to people please. I mean, I'm 40 now. I don't know how old you are now, but
just a bit older than that.
That's right. And I've got to say, like, I've gone through this level of giving like to a healthy amount of giving a lot of less fucks. Like I just do not care. It doesn't matter. I let things slide so much more. Like I can't be asked with the drama. I just want to be me. And
I honestly think that was my favorite thing about turning 40. That was it. I genuinely just felt like I probably around the same time I started my blog, I felt like I just woke up and I was just like, I don't care anymore. Like I'm sensitive to people's feelings.
Yes, of course.
I don't really set to hurt anybody. I'm aware of the impact of things that I say or do on other people, but equally, I don't want I want the things that they say or do to impact me less and to feel comfortable being myself. And what I found was interesting, which is something that I've written about a lot, is that when you suddenly are more open with who you are and being authentic, other people feel more comfortable being authentic as well. And it makes you realize how there are a lot of people out there who are just trying to live up to what they feel they should be talking about or what they feel like they should be doing. And if they see, oh, it's okay to be yourself, and they might try it a bit as well. So to me, that was my favorite thing about turning 40. I just felt like, oh,
yeah,
I can shed all these expectations, other people's expectations, and I can just do me.
So the same way that I understand that when I react to someone, it's my stuff most of the time. Unless someone's being malicious and you have to, whatever. But I'm talking about like regular peeps, who 90% good or whatever. But
exactly.
Right. And so if I react, it's just my stuff. And it's the same way is that if I say or do something that they react to, it's nothing, often it's got nothing to do with me. So in the same way that if you're not being malicious because you can, that's my theory. My theory has been like this for years, and it took me a long time to actually even be comfortable with it in real life. But because I used to do comedy and I still write a lot. And
really?
And so
nice.
One of the things that you realize when you do comedy, it doesn't really matter. Like you could even be Mother Teresa and offend someone. She did offend people, actually. There were people who didn't like her. So you cannot strive your life getting in line with people. You just have to be you, and there's a way to deliver stuff, right? You can say whatever you want is how you say it. It's a context and everything. But if someone is going to be offended, no matter what, they're just going to be offended, or they're going to take it to heart. And so this is why it's so important, for me to just live my life the way that I can actually look at myself in the mirror at night, and I can, and I think this is why it's really good to talk with you about this stuff with celibacy, because I think it's very important that people understand that choice is just as equally important as someone who wants to be sexually free or just have more ownership of it. This is ownership of that part of you, which once you've taken ownership, like you said, it's not a big deal for you. Like it's not something you go around and think about. But it's something that it's yours, right? It's yours to do what you will.
And I definitely think ownership is a huge part of it, because I think, to me, I've seen the outcome of people who don't feel as if they can take ownership of their own sexual feelings, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that can apply to so many different groups of people. But the reality of it is, if you feel like you have to kind of go along with the expectations of society, that can look different. It can look different if you're talking about celibacy. It can look different if you're talking about, wanting to be more open about your sexuality. It can look different if you're a bit non-traditional in terms of how you express that. And so to me, I feel like the thing that's important is to feel comfortable taking ownership of what your true feelings are.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like. So it might not look like necessarily like being celibate, but it might look like, I don't want to have that experience with this person, not feeling pressured, at a particular age to do things that you don't want to do. Any age. It doesn't matter what age you are. It could be an adult, it could be a teenager, whatever. It could look like being able to ask for what you want. And this is something that I think, I've discussed with other people. Like, sometimes what you want isn't necessarily sex. You might want contact, you might want closeness, you might want to feel connected to a person. And being able to differentiate between just wanting a hug or just wanting, to have a certain type of physical contact without it turning into anything more, and being able to express that. I feel like there's so much freedom that comes from taking ownership of how you feel about your own body at any given moment in time.
Yes. No, I love that. And it's so true, because it took me a long time to understand this, and it hasn't been that long, that, it's really important to ask for what you want. And I sometimes still find it difficult, but like even like you were saying, like, you know, whether you want to be held or if you want to have sex or whatever it is that you want, just ask for it. And I mean, I know I mentioned this last time, but when we spoke, but I mean, the last time I was like, you know, physical with a man, it wasn't actually sex. I actually said to him, because it was just after I got dumped and whatnot. But I just needed someone. I just needed to be held, and I said to him, I need cuddles more than I need sex, and he was completely fine with it. I think
exactly.
Yeah, I think people also respect when you ask. They say, okay, that's what you want, especially a man. There's a thing about men. I find that if you say, well, that's what she wants, that's what she needs, that's fine. I'll give that. Like it makes them feel good too, and that's all I needed. And I just needed to be held, and that's what I got. And I was just, it was great. Sometimes, you have to really ask for what you want.
You have to ask for what you want, but I think that the biggest part of that is starting to understand what you want and being okay with it. Being okay with, this is what I want today. Because I think people underestimate the power of physical contact, and I'm not necessarily talking about sex, because I think there's a lot of power in somebody who you love giving you a nice hug, or there's lots of power in physical contact.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people feel like, if you say A, you have to say B. If I ask a person to come and hug me, then I have to take whatever comes along with it. But I don't agree with that. I think you have to, start to get comfortable with how you're feeling, be okay with it, and then you'll be able to ask for what you want. Because you might just want a cuddle, or you might just want a hug, or you might just want to have close contact with someone and not have the pressure of, if I ask for this hug now, what's that person going to think, or what, like all that pressure that goes along with it, and just be able to advocate for yourself, given that you're comfortable with what you want.
No, absolutely. It's so important. That goes across everywhere in life.
Definitely.
So you mentioned about, physical contact and stuff, and like I've got to ask you these questions. How do you? I mean, do you still date? Do you date guys? How does that all work for you?
Wow. So I have some male friends that I do spend time with. I don't know if I call it dating. They probably won't call it dating, because they're everybody has a different expectation of what dating is. So to me, for them, they probably wouldn't call it dating, because they know that there's no maybe promise or expectation of it getting to the stage of being sexual, or we've already discussed that or whatever. But the thing about it is that there's still people I like to spend time with. And on the subject of physical contact, I like physical contact. I love, sometimes I have a crappy day and I'm just like, I need a hug, and I'm okay to call him up and say, oh, come on, and he'll do it. He's cool with that.
Oh, I bet he'll be running down like
he's totally happy with that. Exactly.
Yes.
So to me, I found a way to navigate that, and I do like spending time with people. I do like spending one-on-one time with people and doing things that we both enjoy in common. And there's more than one person that I would spend that time with. But I think what's made the biggest difference for me is that I now find it very much easier to communicate how this is going to go down, in terms of, okay, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I'm not interested in, or to say, well, let's start off here, but let's keep discussing this along the way, or whatever it is. Because what I don't want to do is feel totally closed off. Like I said, I have not ruled out the possibility that I meet somebody that I really want to have a relationship with. And I haven't also ruled out the possibility that I meet somebody who wants the type of relationship that I want, where, there may still be sex, but there may be so many other parts of it as well. So to me, the most important thing is staying open when you meet people. So just being open about who you are and what your life looks like right now, but also being open to the fact that it might look differently in a year's time or a couple of years' time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that I date, as in, I don't necessarily go on dating websites, that type of thing. But if I meet somebody who I get along with and they want to spend some time going to something that we both enjoy, I'm happy to do it. But I'm also I find it a lot easier to communicate now what I want, what I don't want, how fast, slow, whatever you want to use to describe it, I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
And if they're not okay with that, honestly, they're not going to be okay with me, because I'm so non-traditional that if you're not okay with me being myself, this, even as a friendship, this is never going to work. So, you go ahead now. You go away now. That's fine too.
Yeah, well, that's good. But that's all about, you can either accept or reject, and that's it. You can't change people. Like they can't change you. You can't. I mean, that shouldn't be the premise of any new beginnings. It should never be a project. It should just be, okay, well, that's how you are. That's who I am.
Yeah,
and that's it. So let's move forward, or let's not. And I'm the same. I'm like, there's no need to be. That's unnecessary drama, actually, from the get-go. If
exactly. Like and I remember, and this is just to pause for a second. I cannot remember where I read it, but I wrote about it in my book, and I know I have the reference there. So I don't know how I can say it. It's not my original idea. I can email you later and tell you who said it, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I was listening to someone who was talking about intimacy.
Yeah.
And they described it as the ability to feel that a person is accepting you without the fear of judgment. And to me, I love that definition, because I think people always think of intimacy in terms of sex. But if you're even thinking about sex, if you're afraid of being judged about how you look, about your body, about your technique, about whatever, any of those things, it's going to be hard for you to achieve actual intimacy with this person, even if you are having sex with them. So to me, I'm like, it's more important for me to find intimacy with somebody in the not being afraid of having that person judge me for who I am, for the choices that I made. I think I'm far more likely to develop a physically intimate relationship with somebody who I feel that level of intimacy with than otherwise. So to me, that's so much more important than the physical aspect of it. This is why I'm like, if I meet somebody and I say to them, well, this is who I am, and they're not okay with it, then I'm like, okay, well, this is never going to work. So not even as a friendship. So, nice to meet you, or whatever.
but I mean, obviously sex can be intimate, but I don't think that sex it always means intimacy. I mean, you can have sex with someone and it's cold and there's no intimacy. Yes. And you can have intimacy with someone that you
don't have sex with.
Yeah, you've just met and you're flirting and you share things. You can be intimate with someone in a non-physical way, like you're on a plane and you start talking to a stranger and you say people will their whole life, and then you get to baggage claim and it's like, see you later.
Never see that person again.
Never again.
I guess for me, what I started wondering when I started thinking about it is when people are not that I'm saying that they're not sexual beings or they don't want sexual relationships, but there's a part of me that wonders how much of some of that exploration are people searching for intimacy but settling for having a sexual relationship that might not be ideal. Because, like I said, I have no problem having conversations with people about sexual relationships, and there are a lot of people that have that, feel like they could even have decent sex with somebody but not feel connected to the person at all.
Oh yeah.
And in the end, it's not that fulfilling an experience from their perspective. So it makes me wonder, like, how many people that are searching for intimacy, thinking, oh, if you have sex with somebody, you will achieve that intimacy, and being disappointed or being surprised not to feel that way when the time comes.
Yeah. But I think, it's intimacy is hard because that's the one where you are, that's when you really risk to be heartbroken. For real.
Yes.
Because
definitely.
You're completely open. This is why when if a friendship ends or if your best friend moved country, I remember I had a best friend. She when she left London, I live in London, and she left London. I was heartbroken, literally heartbroken, and that's because we had a very meaningful connection. You know, we could just hang out. We didn't have to plan anything. We'd always enjoy each other's company. We knew each other very well. All of that stuff, and I think if you can actually mix that with your romantic partner, the person you have sex with or don't have sex with, it's that feeling of you can be yourself, you're being seen. They may not agree or understand everything, but they accept you for who you are. And that's something I think that we all long for, is to just be, I don't care if someone understands me or not. That's not what I'm after. Like
exactly.
If you can be accepted, to me, that's a bigger sign of love. Because if you can, to understand and accept someone, to accept someone you understand is easy. To love them is easy. But to accept someone despite the differences, to me, harder. That's a big, that's a bigger sign of love. It's like, you know, that's when you know, like, okay, the fabric of the other person, you know, what makes them, and they don't need to feel that they agree on everything they can love you, you know. And I think that's where you really open yourself up, and that's what people are really scared of, because that's when you can really your heart is so open. That's when you can eventually be heartbroken. So we think we want it, but do we do it? I mean,
that's actually true. Actually, that's a very good point.
I mean, I'm scared of it. It's not a place that I easily go to. It's something that when I've had it, I really remember it, but it's not a place that I easily go to. And I'm more reluctant to let go in that way with someone, because, you know, I'm talking about a guy, like, you know,
a guy, obviously,
I'm dating in a relationship and stuff. Yeah, it takes a while.
And I think for me, you know, earlier we were talking about the difference between having bad sexual experiences and just not being that interested in the sex. I feel like sometimes I've had experiences where I felt like it would be so much more than a physical experience, and it wasn't, right? Whereas I feel so much more fulfilled now that I've made a conscious choice to cultivate relationships that are good and meaningful, and to fill me up in that way.
So what did you mean by you thought it would be more than a physical relationship?
Because I think, because in my mind, and this may just be my own personal expectation, but in my mind, whenever I used to think about how sex would be, I thought it would be, I was thinking of it coming alongside that intimacy and that level of closeness, thereby it is, in a way, it is more than a physical relationship. It's hard to describe, but I guess I think about the type of relation, like, you know, we talked more earlier about intimacy that you have with your best friend. I have really good friends. I have a best friend. I have other really good friends, and I feel like we have a relationship that's almost larger than the sum of its parts.
Yes.
In terms of how you feel about the person, and I always felt like that is what sex would be like.
So that's quite a loaded expectation, right?
It's a very loaded expectation.
Yes.
So it may very well be that it's hard to live up to unless you already have that relationship with a person.
Yeah, and I think sex also, like, everyone views it slightly differently, like, and experiences differently. Like, I think for me, like, sex is also, it's a spiritual thing for me. It's a spiritual experience as well. I'm not there like praying before and after.
That's not what I mean, right? Yeah.
But like for me,
no, I totally understand.
Yeah, I think for me, the power of it and what happens, whether it's someone that you are in a committed relationship with or that you're not, it doesn't matter. It's that thing of, it's the experience that's all it is there for, is to give pleasure, and it sort of can really open up your heart. It does so many good things for you, like, you know, on a biological level, on a molecular level, but it's also, like, for me,
it goes beyond that.
It goes beyond that. That's kind of what maybe I thought, that's why I was asking you what you meant with what you were saying, because for me, there's something about it for me that I attached to it. Like, there's a bigger meaning behind it. It can, especially when, I think, especially if you know, when being in a relationship that, you know, when you love each other and it's like there's a meaning behind it and you don't feel judged. I mean, that's the most important thing. It's really hard not to at times, but you want to be able to feel accepted so you can sort of like get your freak on, basically.
Exactly.
And it's being the most primal version of yourself. And in that, there is something, is that self-acceptance, and to have someone who is there able to receive it. And it's, for me, that's a very, it's like bigger than the sum of its part, like you were saying before about friendship.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's not something that you can easily just get like on a Friday night. You know?
But I will say,
it'd be great if you could, but you can't.
It would be great if you could, but I can't. I certainly can't.
Yeah,
what I like was what you said about self-acceptance, because I was having, with a couple of people, I've had a really interesting conversations about that self-acceptance recently. Like, I feel like I finally understood within the last few months or even year how important, like, accepting yourself and loving yourself in a way is to how you're going to experience, how this experience is going to go, not just sexually, but even in terms of your relationships. Because if you judge yourself, it's going to be almost impossible for you not to feel judged by the other person.
Oh, yes.
Like, and this is something that I just felt like all of a sudden I felt like I saw it clearly, because I realized that, I've met people who didn't like themselves very much, or who were very, I guess, judgmental of themselves. They needed to be this, they needed to be that, they needed to have a, bigger boobs or a smaller waist or whatever their own self judgment directed them to, whether they thought they weren't good enough. And what would happen is that it would affect their relationship, because they couldn't believe that the other person felt that way about them. They actually couldn't believe it. So sometimes you could end up actually hurting a person, because you genuinely don't believe the person could accept you the way you are, because you can't accept yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I think a big part of it is self-acceptance, and is being okay with yourself. Otherwise, you will find it very hard to be in any situation, sexual or otherwise, and feel not judged, because your own self-judgment is there constantly.
Oh, yeah. And it will, all the little ugly heads, I call them, like the gremlins will come up, like, and jealousy comes up. And I used to, as a teenager, and probably as a teenager and the early 20s, I used to think that if I had a boyfriend and he said he loved me, I used to think something was wrong with him. So it definitely, the self-acceptance part is super important. Now I'm just like, bring it on, I'm like,
super. Yeah. And so it's hard to feel comfortable, even in a sexual situation. It's hard to say what you want. It's hard to, all of the things that we've talked about, like, the biggest part of it starts with accepting yourself.
It is.
Even if not to say that you think you're perfect, but just accepting the things about yourself, because there's things that you may not like about yourself that other people will like. And, that's just how it is. So you have to accept those things first, or you're not going to believe that other people genuinely like them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's accepted, because it's that thing of, I was super hard on myself, and so I'd be really hard on other people too. And it's like, but then in my 20s, like, I realized something was that the thing I miss the most about someone when they're gone or whatever happens is their quirks. Is that thing that used to annoy me. So now, and I've got this really different, I remember, like, with, we're gonna say an ex. We weren't really like boyfriend, but he would like do something that was kind of like annoying me a little bit, but it was his way of showing his endearment towards me. And I used to just like, and I was like, you know what, that's the thing I would miss if he was gone.
Exactly.
And then sort of enjoy it. And it's the thing. And once you see that in other people, it's much easier to then also you accept yourself. You like you said, like, we're not perfect. So, but it would be boring. Can you imagine going out with someone who's perfect, or having a friendship with someone who's perfect? You'd always be questioning yourself.
You would, but also I guess I think that perfection is still a little bit subjective.
It's
like,
overrated too.
Genuinely, it's overrated. And also, it's like, when I think about what will be perfect for me, I'm pretty sure that would not necessarily be the thing that's perfect for you.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
yes.
Perfection is still a little bit subjective. Like, I remember years ago when I worked in the UK, one of the ladies I worked with used to say to me that her husband, he would see all the celebrities on, the magazines or whatever, the size zeros or whatever. And he was like, they just don't even look like real people.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but, she said she didn't feel the pressure to be a size zero or whatever. He was just like, oh, he likes a person that looks like a real person.
Yes.
And if you think about it, real people are flawed. They'll have their little quirks, both in personality, sometimes in terms of how they look. Perfection is very subjective. And also, it's just not even fun. Like, it's just no fun.
And so it's also a question of taste, right? So,
it is a question of taste.
Everyone's like, oh, we have, everyone thinks it's all about acceptance in the sense that, because, like, before you had to be like, the mainstream was like size zero, and now it's like curvy. Now it's, all of these things.
Exactly.
And it's like, if you go against the stream and you say, well, actually, I really like skinny, or I really like, or I like a full body, I like this.
Yes.
People think, oh, does that mean you don't like, you think the rest is wrong? It's like, no, actually, it's just because you have personal tastes. So it's like,
exactly.
You can't help what you like.
What you like. And people have different tastes in every other regard. People like different fridges, different food, different furniture. That's why there's so people like different clothes. That's why there's so many different things available out there. Why is that not the same when it comes to people? Why is it acceptable that there are 10 million different styles of furniture, but you expect it to be one type of person? Like, that literally makes no sense.
And we all have to have the same taste, the same views on everything. And that would be so boring.
It literally makes no sense. But we have this saying here in Barbados, and it's basically every piece of cloth has its owner.
Every piece of
cloth, material. Every piece of cloth has its owner.
Yes.
And it's like, for everyone. And I genuinely believe this. So to me, I'm like, I'm not saying you shouldn't try to, if you feel like you want to be the best version of yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying, just sit by and don't want to grow or change or work on yourself. But equally, you have to still be able to accept yourself.
Yeah.
Because trust me, somebody out there wants you.
Yes.
Exactly as you are right now.
Yeah.
As a friend, as a partner, as whatever else you want to, whatever other words you want to use. There'll be, that I believe. But you have to be able to accept yourself in order to even see that person's care for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a separate issue. But
and I think actually even more important than that, about accepting yourself. When I wrote down this year, what I want for 2019, I wrote down a few things, and one of them is simplicity. Just say if it's complicating my life and not adding value, I'm not interested. So it's all about simplicity, simplicity. And what I also realized was that when it comes to this, to circle back with what we're saying about relationship and accepting yourself, what I realized was that there, having a relationship with someone may or may never happen. So there is no point me thinking about it, using my energy on this, worrying about it, right?
Totally obsessing about it.
Right. Yeah. There's no point desiring it so much, because then all of a sudden I'll be 80 and going, wait a minute, why did I use all that energy thinking and worrying about it when I could have actually used it on what I want to do, and actually enjoying myself in what I have now and working on what I feel is my purpose in life, right? What is it that I want to get out of this? So, because that I can control that. I know, I can control where I go and what I do every day. But if that thing never happens, imagine all the time that I would have gone around thinking about it and worried about it. And you know what? It has been such a relief. I'm like, it may happen, it may never. I don't care. You want to take me out for dinner? And I'm like, you sure? Let's do this. Let's go out.
If not,
That's it.
Yeah.
I don't even care if it's going to lead somewhere. I just want to enjoy the moment. I want to have the experiences in life, and that's it. The rest will fall into place.
The rest will fall into place, and that's how I feel because you talk about control. First of all, I think that a big part of how we feel about anything in our life is to do with expectations. You could have a lovely car. If you expected it to be a Porsche and it's a Golf, it will never be good enough for you. Right. Yes. So a lot of how we feel about our life is down to our expectations. You could have a great life, but if you expect it, and I know people like this, especially when we all started to turn 40, I had friends who were like, this did not turn out how I expected. So instead of looking around and seeing, you know what, I have good health, I have great friends, a decent job, I have a good life. It's like, I expected I would be married by now. I expected I'd have kids by now. And I know it's hard. I know it's difficult if that is something that's really important to you in life and you don't get it. I'm not trying to minimize that.
No.
But I'm also saying that you have to remember that so much of how you feel about what you have is based on what you expected to have. And you actually don't have that much control over it. I have a couple of friends who met the man of their dreams when they were a lot younger, and the guy passed away. There's so much that can happen that's outside of your control.
Yes,
you have to. I know people who wanted to have kids who couldn't. There are a lot of things that are going to be outside of your control, but what's inside your control is your ability to appreciate the things you have regardless of what your expectations are, because I think when you do that, it's easier to see how you can move closer to a solution that you're that kind of falls somewhere in between the two.
Yes.
You may find another way to have family, or you may find another way to fill up your tank in terms of a relationship. I know people who are married who are more lonely than I am because I've purposely cultivated relationships to kind of fill up that part of me that needs that connection. So I think you have to just remember some things are not within your control. And if you want a relationship, it might be that you want connection, and try to find a way to make sure you're getting that part of you filled up so that you're not desperate or your time is consumed thinking about this person and when she's going to come and all that kind of stuff, because that then your life will pass you by. So you'll wake up and you'll be 80 and be like, whoa, what did I spend my whole life? Like, what was that all about?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's like what you were saying, I agree with everything you said. I love what you just said there, with expectations, because that's how you suffer, right? That's adding extra suffering, because life will happen no matter what. There'll be tragedy in your life, regardless. That's how life and death.
That's how life is.
Yes. Yeah. So why adding extra drama? Why extra adding like sad movie in your mind into I wish I had, I wish I did. Actually, look around, look around and see what you've got, and it really has to do with the self-acceptance and accepting where you are. And it doesn't mean you're not going to strive, because I'm someone who wants to experience as much as I can in life, which is why,
me too.
Which is why like my business got me. This is why I do like health, because I want my body to be. It's important for my body to be in shape and my health to be in shape, so that I can, in my mind, so I can keep doing as many things I want, all the things I want for as long as I can. So self-acceptance does not equal that you've given up. It just means that,
it doesn't mean stagnation. It
just means that you feel more joy. I feel more joy. It doesn't mean I'm not going to get depressed again or have a bad day or things like that. But it just means that I feel more joy, and I know what I can and what I cannot control, and I have to accept that.
Yes, exactly. That's precisely what it is.
Yeah.
So and so I definitely think that you don't have as much control over things that you might think, and there's so much good stuff out there in the meantime. Like, so much good stuff out there in the meantime.
Absolutely. This has been a really feel good conversation, by the way.
Good. I'm glad. I've enjoyed it. I've super enjoyed it. I enjoyed our first conversation as well.
Yeah. So this is this has been like amazing. I like, where can you tell us like where people can find you, find your books, I don't mean like knocking on your door in Barbados, but I'm just saying like,
here's the thing. I love people to visit Barbados. I can't house necessarily people, but I'm always happy to show them around. Like, I love people visiting Barbados. It's a beautiful place. There's lots of things here that people don't expect to see, because people always think Barbados beaches. Yes, the beaches are beautiful. So many other beautiful things to see in Barbados. So this is my plug. Come to Barbados, and if you want to find me, my blog website address is I don't know if you're going to have show notes or whatever.
I will put it in the show notes, but just say
great. I'll tell you what it is. It's www.39andcounting.com. So the digits 39 and counting.com.
That's a good name.
And yeah, because when it was supposed to be 39 lessons before I turned 40, and they never stopped coming. And I'm past 40 now. Yeah. So it's 39andcounting.com. And so then in terms of, if you want to email me, it is 39andcountingblog@gmail.com. And all details are there. I have details about my book there. There's my whole blog series there. The blog is a little bit under construction, but you can still find everything. So you can click on the link that says 39 lessons, and you'll find the original posts from those lessons. But then there are the posts that I wrote in 2017 and 2018 and 2019. They're all the tabs there. So you can find just about anything. And you'll learn a lot about me from reading my blog.
That's great. Well, Safiya, this has been amazing. Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything that you in case I forgot something?
Not really. I think I like I said, back to what we said at the beginning, I just think it's really important for people to feel comfortable with the person that they are at that moment in time. And it might be, like I said, that you're really interested in having different sexual experiences, or like me, you're like, I got other things to do, and you go along and do those things. But like, I think the most important thing is just don't feel ashamed about it. There's nothing to be ashamed about in terms of how you're feeling at any given moment in time. I will give a little plug for my book. It's called Everything is a Thing. And basically it's about the fact that everything that you feel is legitimate. There's nothing wrong with it. And you need to start to settle into that fact that, you know what, it's okay. And there's somebody else out there that probably feels this way too. And just be okay with it. Ask for what you want.
Yeah, this is great. Well, definitely, I think everyone should go to your blog, 39andcounting.com, and just like read a lot more. This has been absolutely wonderful, Safiya. Thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Talking with me, it's been great. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing some of the other episodes.
Thank you.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe on iTunes or anywhere else you listen to podcasts from. Drop me questions or any topics you'd like me to cover next time. Please send me a message. You can easily find me on angie-s.com. So that's angies.com, spelled angie-s.com. Come and join me on the website or find me on Instagram at Health Lifestylist. All the links are in the show notes. And until then,
using health inappropriately.